in the Limelight, and we are with our good friends from DomesticSheltors.org. Yet again, we are with Amanda Kippert, and Amanda is the editorial director, and Ashley Rumschlag, who is the VP of Digital Services. We like to come to you as frequently as we most possibly can to keep you in the loop on what's happening, what's going on over at DomesticSheltors.org, and certainly how you can get the help that you need, or you can get it for someone that you know that needs it. So ladies, welcome to the show again. Good to see you. So good to see you back. I'm very excited to talk about something that I don't think we've talked about in the past. We've sort of touched upon it, but today we're going to take that deeper dive. And it is about trauma-related guilt when it comes to domestic violence. And I was speaking to you pre-show, Amanda, about exactly what that is. You know, we say many survivors of domestic violence and abuse experience something called trauma-related guilt. What is it exactly?
Right. So trauma-related guilt is the trauma that that surrounds trauma in its aftermath. And so specifically when we're talking about domestic violence, it would be the guilt that a survivor takes on after an abusive incident. So he or she might believe that they were the cause of that abusive incident, or that they should have done more to stop it, that they can prevent future incidents. There's often trauma-related guilt around an abuser getting arrested, going to prison, and the survivor takes that on as somehow that was my fault. And then the abuser begins to exploit those feelings because that works well for the abuser.
Right. Telling the abusee that in fact it was their fault.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Obviously, none of that is true because, as we say 1,000 times on DomesticSheltors.org, it's never the survivor's fault. Nothing that a survivor does causes abuse. It is always an abuser's choice to abuse.
Yeah. Hard call, though. Hard call, especially when you have children at home and this is your father, that their father that you potentially are sending away, or getting in trouble or whatever. I mean, it's always on the woman to make these choices that are so difficult to make, ladies.
Exactly. Yeah, and often there are children involved, so that only adds to the guilt, because that is the father in some cases, or a father figure, and then that person is going away, and you have to explain that to the children, and so it's natural, I think, for women in general, who are the majority of abuse victims,
right,
to feel guilty about everything anyway. So it's only natural that for abusive situations,
because then you become the bad guy, right? You're the bad guy, which is really, it's just so contorted and so twisted. And I love what you're saying, Amanda, and how, it's like, stay strong because it isn't you, it didn't do anything wrong. Mm-hmm. And again, as I say frequently, and it's not my quote, but if it hurts, it isn't love. And that's basically, my story, and that's what I'm sticking to. So, can we fix an abuser? Can they potentially be fixed, or can you love an abuser enough to kind of, get him through it, work him through it?
Yeah, I mean, it's common
for him on the other side, kind of thing.
Yeah, it's common that an abuser, may have lived through some kind of abusive or neglectful childhood, or experienced some sort of trauma or setback in their life. So, their partner may feel sympathy towards them and a desire to, save them from their past, or kind of be that first person in their life that was actually supportive of the abuser when they feel like everyone else in their life has abandoned them. So there's kind of this, sense of a desire to fix them, or the desire to be that person that's going to fix them. But, the bottom line is the survivor can't fix the abuser. There's no way around it. The abuser has to want to change. They have to save themselves. It's not the responsibility of the survivor to change the abuser, and really any efforts, maybe will give you some short-term benefits here and there just to kind of appease you. But the long term, it's not going to make a difference. Yeah.
Well, under the love umbrella, things get to be they get tacky, don't they? They get a little sticky and a little difficult. I love him, and I don't want to lose him, and what would I do without him? And he doesn't mean it. And it's just his way of, being sometimes, or he must've been stressed, or back to the point, it must've been something I did or said. And, and certainly again, if fists are flying, it's not, it absolutely isn't your fault. And that should be really, really clear. And I think we make that pretty clear every time we do come on air. how normal are feelings of guilt after leaving an abuser or pressing charges against an abuser? Amanda, how normal are those feelings of guilt, and what can we do when they start, those feelings of guilt start creeping up?
Sure. I would say, and I'm not a psychologist, but I would say absolutely 100% normal. Because what you have to remember is that, if I'm speaking to the survivor, like at one time you really cared about this person, or you were in love with this person, or maybe you still are in love with this person. So in order to not feel those feelings of guilt, you have to assume that those feelings are just turned off. So people around the survivor have quote unquote normal responses, right? They're angry that this abuse happened if they find out about it. And they feel it's justified for the abuser to go to jail. But for the survivor, this is somebody that you may have been married to or fathered your children. And so to see that person arrested, or to see that person prosecuted in some way, you're going to take some of that on. Like I played a part in that. When actually that's not at all true. So I think the first step for survivors who's feeling this guilt, which can compound on itself, is to practice self-compassion. How would you respond to somebody who disclosed abuse to you? Would you tell them, what did you do? It was your fault? You wouldn't. You would never say that. You would say, it's absolutely not your fault. That guy's an a-hole and he chose to do that, right? So you have to practice that kind of speech with yourself. And then I would say the second most important thing is to have a support person, hopefully survivors do in their life, that they can talk to, who can sort of poke holes in this like theory that's going through their head that they had some sort of part in this. You need that voice of logic to say, again, it wasn't your fault. You chose to do this to you, and that is why the abuser has been arrested. That's why you were leaving them, et cetera, et cetera. And if you have that support person, because a lot of abusers make sure that a victim doesn't, because they isolate them in order to not have anyone in their life that can give them logical advice, then that's where hotlines and advocates come into play.
Absolutely.
Going through, you pick up a phone, call an advocate, call a hotline, tell them what's going on, and they can help to justify those feelings.
Right. So there goes the ticker, DomesticSheltors.org. Everybody get over there. There's, again, plethora of information. It's really a very, very well done. The newsletters, sign up for them. They come out weekly, ladies. Is it weekly?
Yes. Yeah. Every week. Every Tuesday, there's an email.
Right. And they are extremely well done. So all the information you would ever need is over at DomesticSheltors.org. I speak about it frequently. I get the word out as much as I possibly can. Something, as easy as, as I think I've said before, just on social media, especially, recently on TikTok, there are these girls and women getting on there saying, this is what happened, and take a look at, the mess that was left behind, all that sort of thing. And I just call, get with DomesticSheltors.org. And I hope that that I'm able to help somebody along the way. So Ashley, how do abusers use trauma-related guilt to manipulate and control a survivor?
Right. Yeah. So, an abuser may convince the survivor that the survivor is the only person that could possibly save them, save that abuser from their past or present demons, the things that they're facing in their life. And when in reality, as we've kind of, already mentioned, this isn't, this is really just a way for them to maintain power and control over them by telling the person that, the things that happened to me in my life are your responsibility. It, makes that person carry that weight on their shoulder and feel the weight of that responsibility. And then in turn, the guilt, if they were to make a decision that they've been manipulated to feel, was their decision to make, or make a decision that would, adversely affect the abuser. So, and many survivors believe that, if only they could do the right things or say the right things or, just be that perfect partner, that they'd be able to keep the peace and avoid the abuse when, leaving that survivor to be in kind of this never-ending cycle of, looking for approval and seeking something that's never going to happen. So, these different ways that they, an abuser can leverage the guilt and kind of responsibility that the survivor feels to keep them under their control.
Yeah. So what do you ladies say to those that say, oh my God, why doesn't she just leave already?
Yeah, I mean, that's a common misnomer that, as soon as, because any person would say, who has never been with an abusive partner, if someone hit me, if someone abused me, I would leave. Right. Well, you don't take into account the fact that they share children, that they share finances, that one of them may be the sole breadwinner, and that's usually the abuser. So, where's the victim survivor going to go? There are a ton of barriers that can stand in the way of just simply leaving somebody like that. When we have polled survivors before on DomesticShelters.org, what was the biggest barrier for you to leave? The number one answer was fear of retaliation. Because the abuser has often convinced the survivor, if you leave, I will go and find you, and I will kill you. I will kill your children. I will kill your parents. I mean, these are terrifying threats to hear. And oftentimes the survivor is so in it, so brainwashed, so scared and traumatized already that these survivors, these threats are enough to keep that survivor there indefinitely.
Well, the good news is that many women have walked before you, and they have gotten up, moved on, and never looked back. The bad news is that fear does exist, and I think that the three of us are here to say DomesticShelters.org is there to help you through thick and thin. And there are plans and blueprints and all kinds of things over there. So again, the ticker is there for a reason, DomesticShelters.org. The last thing I wanted to say, and I don't know, and this is, again, Amanda, this is from one of your articles in the newsletter, and I pull it because I loved it so much, but is closure really possible after abuse?
I would think so. Yes. We've had survivors say absolutely. Again, this was a piece where we talked to a lot of survivors who have since escaped abuse, and we asked them, how did you find closure? And for some of them, it was instant, but for most of them, it took months, if not years, to find that closure. And I think I often compare abuse to a hostage situation. As soon as you escape that hostage taker, you're not necessarily free, because that trauma is going to hold you there for a while. It's only when you start to truly believe that you are safe and in control of your life is when you can find that closure. And that feeling comes in a lot of different ways for survivors. We list a multitude of different self-care tactics on our website. Therapy is obviously a big one. Support groups, talking to other survivors who've been through it. I think the most important thing to remember is that you don't want to look, a day down the road. You want to look 5 years down the road.
Sure.
Where do you want to be? And do you still want to be with this person? Because they're not going to change. So you need to figure out if you're ready to do that work and to take the steps to safety. And there is a safe way to leave. We should reinforce that.
Absolutely. And if that's a message you need to hear, if it's a message that someone that needs to hear, please make sure the message gets to them too, about DomesticShelters.org. There is a plan, as Amanda says. Let's remind everybody also, Ashley, that there are 3,000 shelters all over the United States and parts of Canada now, and that there are different ways that people can help these shelters because there's definitely a need. So let's talk about that a second, and then I want to ask you about the wish list.
Yeah, so the wish list program on DomesticShelters.org allows people to send gifts directly to the shelters. It's as easy as going on and searching by zip code or city state and finding a local program or resource or shelter for domestic violence survivors, and shopping, putting things in your cart and checking out like you would any normal store. So it's a really easy to use program, and especially around the holiday time, we find that a lot of people like to use it as that gift for the person that has everything, to say, hey, I know you don't need anything. You have everything you need. Right. So I donated, $300 worth of items to XYZ shelter, down the street. So it's a great way to give to people. I know I do it with my dad every year. We get together and we sit down at the laptop and we send off gifts to the near shelter to where my hometown is. So it's a fun way to give back, and it's a really easy way.
It is a fun way. It is an easy way. And the cool thing is, you just, you go on, you find a shelter that you want to donate to. There's, then again, they have their wish list. They tell you what you need. It's not even like you don't have to guess about what to send. They tell you
and
what they need. It's right there.
Right. Yeah, you don't have to guess what color, what quantity. It's all right there.
It's all right there. So you just decide what you want to send, and it shows up on their door. And I'm sure when it gets there, there are a lot of warm feelings and many smiles. I want to also actually talk about the Purple Ribbons Women Awards. That's so exciting.
Yes, so we're inching ever so closely to the January 1st date when the nominations will open up. This is an opportunity for people all over the world. We're not limiting it to geographical location. Anyone can nominate those heroes that are, are on the front lines, making a difference, the allies of the different programs, just anyone that's really moving forward the goal to end domestic violence. And so the biggest piece of it is there is $30,000 up for grabs in grants that will go to programs, that we kind of deem are the best of the best. Like I said, starting January 1st, you can go on to purpleribbon.awards.org. You can go on there now to learn more information, but you can go on there starting January 1st and actually start to nominate, those heroes in your community.
So give us an idea of the categories. What kind of heroes are we talking about? So
Yes. So there's over 30 categories. I'll kind of give you a quick.
Yikes. Well, that's great because that means a lot of people are helping.
Exactly. Well, it's such a broad, there's so many people doing so much great work that it's we wanted to be able to recognize those people that, aren't often recognized.
Right.
So obviously, we're looking at our volunteer of the year, executive director of the year, shelter of the year. We're even looking at, people who had a product or a service launch this year and did a really great job with that. So those things that are contained within the different programs and shelters.
Right.
But then beyond that, looking at, okay, well, who's a really good, community partner? Someone like another, a private or non-profit or for-profit or nonprofit organization that might be just, knocking it out of the park as far as helping their local domestic violence programs.
Right.
Law enforcement officer of the year, looking at, civic engagement groups. So like Kiwanis or Rotary Club, different groups like that, just really wanting to recognize everyone who's had a hand in, moving towards that goal of ending domestic violence.
Yeah. Amen. Amen. Yeah. Okay, last thing I wanted you to talk about, and I know who wants to answer this. I understand there's a webinar happening tomorrow and next Thursday. So webinars are starting to become a big part of what's happening at DomesticShelters.org as well. I think it's kind of new. I don't remember it ever thinking about it before.
We kind of go in spurts when we can kind of line up some really, great topics to cover. We had a couple back in the summer, and now we are excited to have a couple back to back here. So tomorrow we're going to be, we're going to have Rachel Ramirez of the Ohio Domestic Violence Network, and she's going to be talking about, traumatic brain injuries and strangulation. And then next Thursday, we'll have Kim Schooler with Wealth Wave. She's going to be talking about financial abuse. And these webinars are geared towards domestic violence professionals. So there's going to be information that can then immediately be put into place in practice at the shelters and really start to help survivors and help, improve the services that they're already providing.
Extraordinary. You ladies are doing some really phenomenal work over there. Amanda, some closing words, if you would. And I know we probably said it all already, but I think that at a certain point, you can never say it enough. Some closing words on anybody that might be suffering from trauma-related guilt.
Yeah. Closing words. I would say just make sure that you find somebody that can listen to you and that you trust to disclose that abuse to, someone that's safe to disclose that abuse to, and then work out those feelings with them and really ask yourself, do I really truly in my heart of hearts believe that I had some sort of part in this? Because the answer should always be no. And I would say that dealing with trauma-related guilt is something that survivors need to face because it's going to be the reason that they go back to an abuser if they don't deal with it. It's going to be one of the reasons, because the abuser is going to convince them, if you can just work on yourself, this won't happen again. If you don't, this won't happen again. And, I hope that red flags just pop up everywhere, like lie,
Right.
all lie.
Right. Well, ladies, that's how quickly the 20 minutes does go. So thank you for all the information. Again, everyone, DomesticShelters.org. Should you be in need, they are there 24/7. There's a hotline and all kinds of information on the website. We've got webinars, we've got wish lists, and we've got Purple Ribbon Awards as well. So busy ladies, Amanda and Ashley, that's for sure. And I'm assuming that we're going to be in the same time, the same place, ladies, in 2 weeks' time.
Well, I think we're getting near the holidays. That might put us actually on the week of Christmas. So we'll get together and hopefully get some airtime here soon.
Okay. Whatever it is.
Right. It is December, Clarissa. I don't know if you know that.
Yeah, I know, but I'm a 24/7 kind of gal. We just keep plowing through.
I know.
So you just let me know when we'll meet again, and I'd be happy to be here for DomesticSheltors.org for you and for everyone that needs to hear the message. Thanks again, ladies. We'll talk to you again real soon.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.